The story was shared on Reddit by a grieving mother whose visits to her daughter's grave slowly turned into a nightmare. Few years back, life was ordinary. The husband and wife, they loved each other. They had a child and their whole world revolved around her. She had a personality which was bigger than her size. She would turn a quiet room into a circus within seconds. Some mornings started with her laughter, while others started with tantrum. Then they had these normal doctor visits. She was fussy about these visits, but they were always concerned about the health and wanted her to be healthy. So they would forcibly take her. Then came this visit, which was expected to be a normal routine check. But the doctor, after the checkup, seemed serious. He called the parents in the cabin and broke down the news. The little girl had cancer. Overnight, their lives changed. The routine where their mornings started with laughter and tantrums now transitioned to hospital corridors, treatments, chemotherapy, talks that every parents have nightmare about. Every good news was like a ray of hope, but every setback was like a heartbreak. But still, at the end of the day, they were parents and then they never gave up. Always were positive, they started praying, they put all their money, all their strength, everything, and making sure she gets well soon. But the odds were against them and they lost their daughter. She passed away. Their whole life shattered. The room that was once filled with stuffed toys was now filled with silence. The silence that ate them. It was really difficult to live with that loss and with that silence. But eventually, they learned to live with it and they found a place that really gave them a little bit of peace, their daughter's grave. Not because they loved to visit the grave, but because that was the only place that felt closer to their daughter, that felt that they had not forgotten her. They would go there, sit over there, talk about their day with their daughter, like she was never gone. She was still amongst them. And that really helped them. That helped them heal, and it eventually became a routine. Every morning before work, they would come and visit the daughter. Sometime together, sometime individually. One fine morning, the father was busy at work, the mother had some time, so she came and visited the grave. A normal routine visit. As she approached the grave, she found a rolled piece of paper on the grave, and it was hidden among these decorations. They would bring decorations, small gifts, stuffed toys, and keep on the grave just to personalize it. So this piece of paper just slid amongst the stuffed toys and the small gifts. At first, she just thought that it was there due to the wind and she ignored it and she almost walked away. But something did not feel right. You know that feeling that we get that something is not right? No reason. It's just a gut feeling. So she bent down and lifted the paper up in her hand. As soon as she lifted the paper in her hand, it felt that it was purposely left over there. And as she started to read each word, her blood ran cold. Her stomach dropped. She could not believe each word that was written over there. It was not a prayer. It was not a sympathy, and it was definitely not a message of condolence. It was a speech full of hatred. The paper that she was staring at was a sign that someone was forcibly trying to insert themselves in the most painful chapter of her life. At first, she tried to convince herself that the note was just a one-off thing. It was cruel enough that even the thought of it would worry her, would put her in fear. But amongst everything, the note was confusing. I mean, why would someone walk in the cemetery, find a grave, child's grave, and leave a note with hatred comments on it? Nothing made sense. So she just thought that someone was trying to be evil just for the sake of being evil, and they did it. She tore that note she was holding in the hand and threw it away and moved on with her life. But the next time when she visited the cemetery, things changed. She was anxious. Before she even reached the grave, she would start to scan the decoration. She would start to search for something that was not even there. And when she got closer, there was another note sitting on the grave. Someone had come back. The grave That was place of comfort, place of peace, place where they felt closer to the daughter has turned into a place of anxiety. Every visit started the same way, looking around, checking nearby cars, watching people nearby the cemetery, wondering whether one of them would know something about these notes. Then another note appeared, and another. Sometimes they were tucked in the decorations, sometimes hidden in a place where only the family could find it. Whoever left those notes knew exactly where to hide them, and eventually another possibility creeped into their mind. What if this wasn't an act by a stranger? What if there was someone close to them doing this? Someone who knew their routine, someone who was watching them very closely. Because strangers can be unpredictable, but someone who knows you can get close, very close. And with time, the notes became personal. So the list of possibilities, the list of suspects grew. Neighbors, friends, they just started doubting everyone around them. Because when someone knows enough about you to target the deepest wound in your life, you stop looking at strangers. You start looking at people around you. You start looking at people whom you hang out with. Then one note appeared that was different. This was personal. This was a note that changed the thinking of the family. They stopped thinking that these notes were a sign of harassment, but it became a sign of threat. Whatever was in there was inducing them with fear. And the reason it felt different this time was because the note was not talking about the past, but it was talking about the future. Around the same time, the family received the news which they desperately needed. The mother was pregnant again. After everything that the family has been through, this felt like a little ray of hope, not because they were about to replace their daughter. Nothing in the world or no one in the world could replace her place in their heart. But after a long time, life felt like it was moving forward. And around that same time, they found this note. It was waiting for them on the grave. And this time, the writer was not talking about their daughter who had died. The writer was talking about the baby, which was not even born. The note celebrated death of their dead daughter, but at the same time wished the same fate on the child that was not even born. After reading that note, they were just blank. How evil can someone get? The words written on that note were horrifying, but that was not the most frightening part. The most fearful part was, how did that person know about this news? Because pregnancies are not public knowledge, especially in the early months. Now this meant one of two things could be true. Either someone from their family or friends was the one who's doing this, or there may be someone who's watching them very closely than they ever imagined. And neither of the possibility offered them comfort. The family started replaying conversations in their head, trying to remember who knew about this. Every answer only created more questions, because no matter how they looked at it, it just did not make sense. Because there was no obvious enemy, no person they could point to. They were good to everyone. Kind family that always thinks good about everyone and does not think bad about anyone, does not do bad to anyone. So they expected the same from the world, but what was happening to them was difficult to believe. No explanation was fitting the situation. Just a realization that whoever was doing this knew far more about their life than they should have. And this realization followed them everywhere, at work, at cemetery, in all ordinary moments. They started wondering, this person knew a private information. What else does that person know? And before the family could make sense of all this, the situation escalated again. The person behind the messages left behind more than words, because the flowers were not at the place they left it last time. The decoration felt a bit odd. Some things were moved from here to there. Most of the people would never even notice this. But when the grave becomes like a sacred place and the place that you visit every day, you start noticing everything. They started making excuses that maybe it was the wind, maybe it was the grief, the sadness that was playing with their mind. Until one visit, none of the explanations made sense. A small angel statue that was very close to their heart was kept at the daughter's grave, and that statue was deliberately damaged. That damage wasn't the thing that frightened them the most, but the fact that someone walked the cemetery, stood where the family always stood, and touched things around that meant the world to them. For the first time, they stopped thinking who was leaving notes and started thinking whether they had met this person before and trusted them with things they should have not. Maybe they had shaken hands with them while never realizing what this person was really capable of. Because if this was true, this person was not a stranger anymore. It was a family member or their friend, someone who knew their routine, who knew everything about them. A few days later, the mother and the father visited the grave together. They did not want to leave each other alone and visit the grave alone because if there was a threat, they wanted to be there for each other. They knew that they are not stopping visiting the grave just because someone is sending some notes and destroying their statue. They wanted to be close to their daughter. So they made courage and visited the grave again. As they approached the grave, they seen a teddy bear. As they kept getting closer, the teddy bear had no head. Someone had cut it off deliberately. The mother and the father froze because someone had chosen to buy a teddy bear, cut its head off, walk the cemetery, find the daughter's grave, and leave it there deliberately so that next time when they visit, they could find it. Every part of it had been planned. That was the moment the fear changed. This wasn't a person acting out in anger. This was a person who was very patient, someone who understood how to hurt them without even being present over there. The mother picked up the teddy bear, got in the car, and drove straight to the police station. By now, the officers knew exactly who she was. Every time she walked in through those doors, there was something new. Another note, another threat, another reminder that someone had turned a daughter's grave into a place of fear. This time, she laid everything in front of them. The notes, the damaged statue, the headless teddy bear, everything. And surely this had to be enough to catch the person who was behind this. The police investigated, considering all the evidence they had in front of them. But each time they progressed in the investigation, they hit the same wall. They knew who was responsible, they just couldn't prove who. As days passed by, the same name crossed the family's mind. A man called C. It was the same name that had crossed their mind when they received the note about the pregnancy. But they had just dismissed it. But now they could not, because every time they thought about it, things started to make sense. C knew the family very well. He knew things very few people knew, including the pregnancy. Old conversations they had with C started to sound different. Comments that was once passed and seemed harmless at that time started to carry a different weight. Small coincidences no longer felt coincidences at all. It wasn't that they had discovered a new evidence. They started playing these things in their mind and revisiting these moments, and things started to make sense, and every time they thought about it, they stopped at this person C. But every road ended the same way. No fingerprints, no witness, no CCTV, no confession, but the family knew that C was responsible. At the same time, the police did not think the same. They wanted proof. Then suddenly, without a warning, everything stopped. No more notes, no more vandalism, no more threats, nothing. The silence returned back. At first, the family felt relief, but then another feeling came through: confusion. Why stop? Why now? Had the person responsible felt that the suspicion was heading close to him? Or they simply felt sorry that they had caused too much pain already? No one knew, and no one would ever know, because there was no arrest, there was no confession, there was no CCTV footage, there was nothing. The case remained unsolved. No piece of evidence ever proved who had been tormenting this family. There was no closure for this family. But for the family, one name still came in their mind: the man called C. And maybe they were right. Maybe every conversation, every coincidence, every unsettling feeling had been pointing towards him from the very beginning. Or maybe the grief was trying to give a faceless monster a face. Because if C was innocent, then it was someone else. And if it was someone else, who was it?